All right, guys, so we're going to talk about how we price in the menu. All right. We did talk about in the beginning, this slide is one of the first slides I showed you in this presentation or in this chapter was the cost plus, competitive, and value-based. When we use value-based and competitive, it's more of a gut kind of thing. Competitive, what are they charging? I'm going to charge the same or a little bit more, a little bit less. Value-based, we have to figure out what people were willing to pay. In the end, it's a judgment call on those. However, for cost plus, we have mathematical equations that we can use. All right, so let's talk about those. All right, so for cost plus, we have food cost percentage, we have contribution margin, we have the factor method. I briefly mentioned that at the beginning of the last video. Okay, so when I have a food cost percentage that I want, okay, I don't know what my food cost percentage is really until I have my price, right? Because the part divided by the whole is the cost divided by the price. However, if I know that I want a specific food cost percentage, and in the industry, we would usually want to keep it around 32, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, right around there. So some chefs are adamant about one or the other. So let's just say we want to keep our restaurant, we decided that we want 32% to be our food cost for all of our items. So I have that constant right now. And the other piece of information I have for every single item, hopefully, is my cost. All right. So if a dish costs $2.50 to produce, right? I don't have a price yet, but I know I want to make I only want to have a 32% food cost percentage on that. I have everything I need. All right. I have my cost of the specific item. I don't know if you see my cursor here, but we have the cost and I have the desired food cost percentage. So I divide the cost by the desired food cost percentage. So I told you I had $2.50. I think I said it, but let's just say, even if I didn't say, I'm going to add a little light here so my calculator gets powered up. So $2.50 divided by 0.32, which is my desired food cost percentage, was 32%. Make sure you do it in proper decimals. All right. So $7.81. It's actually 7.8125. Let's call it 780. $7.80 is going to be my menu price. All right. So that's beautiful. All right. Anytime you have your known cost and your desired food cost percentage, you can determine a menu price. Easy. Just by dividing the the food cost by the desired food cost percentage in decimals, you will get your price. Okay? That's very simple. Lots of students mess this up. Lots of students get confused by dividing decibels. Use a calculator. Don't worry about it. 2.5 is $2.50 divided by 0.32 will give me 7.8125. Very simple. Okay, so let's move forward. The next way we do it is the contribution margin. Contribution margin is a way to say that for every item I want to make $5. So let's just say some items fluctuate as far as the food cost or whatever. And if I use food cost percentage, let's say I use the food cost percentage, I want 32% for everything, right? But I use that for drinks. I'm going to end up with a 70-cent drink, all right? We know now that 70 cents, if people see 70-cent drink, they're going to wonder what's wrong with it, all right? So we might not do that. We might say, okay, we want a contribution margin of a certain amount. Now, what is a contribution margin? The contribution margin is simply in dollars and cents how much I'm going to make on an item. All right. So I say that no matter how much I spend for this item, I want to make $5 in everything. That's it. I want to make $5. If If I have a very low cost, that means I'm going to have a low menu price. If I have a very high cost, that means my menu price is only going to be $5 over, and my percentage is going to be way down. But I'm going to use a contribution margin. So very, very simple. Selling price equals the my desired contribution margin. What did I just say? My selling price is going to be my cost plus my contribution margin. Now, everything has a contribution margin. Quite frankly, very few people will use a contribution margin to figure out prices, right? However, contribution margin is always there, right? No matter how you price out your menu, you're going to have a contribution margin. If I'm using competitive pricing and I price something out at $5 and my cost is $4.75, my contribution margin is 25 cents, all right? But sometimes using a contribution margin is a smart thing to do, all right? You're just trying to get a certain amount of money for everything, and you don't want the percentages, because if you use percentages, it's going to be either way too high or way too little, right? So I had a boss of mine that says that said, when you price it out, use whatever percentage you want, but at the bottom line for every one of the uh, entrees, regardless of what the food cost percentage came out, I want to make $5. All right. So the things that I didn't pay a lot for and my food cost percentage would have been really, really low. And if I had used the food cost percentage method, I would have ended up not making that much money. I want to make $5 in each thing, so I'll use that $5 contribution margin. All right. Does that make sense? Okay. So the next one is the one that confuses the heck out of every single student. All right. It is the pricing factor. The pricing factor is nothing more than taking your food cost percentage method and turning that dreaded decimal into a more user friendly way of doing things. All right. So we're converting that percentage that we would have to divide using the first method into a multiplier. I cannot say this word enough. Every semester I'll say multiplier, 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 and then I see students math and they're dividing things, and okay, it's a nightmare. However, all right, you have to get that pricing factor first. So what it is it's the way to convert a percentage into a multiplier. Okay, if I keep it as a percentage, I divide that percentage, or I divide the cost by that percentage. But I don't want to do that. I want to just multiply that cost by something. So I'm converting that percentage into a multiplier. How do I do that? Right here. 1 divided by the food cost percentage equals my pricing factor. So that 32% that I had, if I have 1 divided by 0.32, my factor is 3.12. Okay, so what do I do with that? Great. Does that mean that my price is $3.12? No, 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 no. We're just creating the factor right now. So I take that factor. Actually, let's see. Let's do it here for 33%. All right. So 30.33 divided by, or 1 divided by 0.33 equals 3.33. So that is my pricing factor. The other one I said was 3.12 for 32%. That was my pricing factor. So okay, yeah, all right, fine. So pricing factor times product cost is your menu price. Remember I said that the pricing factor is a multiplier, okay? So I take that 33% or that 32%, instead of having to divide my cost by 0.32, I created that, that pricing factor, which was 3.125, and I multiply that by my, let's see here. This is, Okay, we got 30.3 or 3.33. So that's what it would be for 33%. So we have 3.33 here as our pricing factor. Let's say my cost is $4.27. If I multiply 3.33 times 4.27, I end up with a menu price of $14.22. I just confused myself. So let's take a step back here. All right. Let's say, okay, so this is a pricing factor. That is the pricing factor for 3.3 or for 33%. Now, here's the thing about pricing factors. They stay the same. The pricing factor for 33% is always going to be 3.33. All right. So one of these slides right here, we have a little chart. Okay. We have a chart. The pricing factor for desired food cost percentage of 20 is 5. The pricing factor for desired food cost percentage of 25 is 4. 28, 3.5. So if I say I want a food cost percentage of 30%, all I ever have to do is multiply my cost by 3.333 and I get my price. All right. Very simple. To me, it's just as simple as, dividing by 0.30 is just as easy. But for some people, it's not. Okay. So this is a way to take that cost percentage and convert it into a multiplier. Instead of dividing by a decimal, I'm multiplying. Okay. That's all it is. In a high volume kitchen with a lot of inexperienced chefs or whatever, a chef might have these charts, or he already knows that he always wants 33% or 30%. So he will just tell anybody, hey, if you're pricing out my menu, use a pricing factor of 3.33, and that's fine. And then they look at him and they say, what? What do you mean by that? Multiply the cost by 3.333, and that gives me what I want. And that's my price on the menu. Okay, that's very, very simple, but it confuses a lot of people. All right. The in our exercise this week, you're going to be filling out making one of these charts. And it's not the same numbers that you have here, it's other numbers. All right. So I can tell you right now, from now until the end of the semester, we will be using the pricing method, and you will sometimes have to create the pricing factor. We'll be using the pricing factor method, and sometimes you'll have to create the factor. Other times you'll just have to use a factor that I give you. Okay, so let's see what else is going on. Okay, so special pricing stuff. Quickly finish this up with things like coupons, value pricing, bundling, salad bars. Salad bars are kind of tricky. Let's go to salad bars. All you have to take into consideration with a salad bar is how much is being eaten and what is being eaten. So if I prepare a whole bunch of food, I have the food cost for that. I put it on the bar. I see what's being eaten. I know how much I paid for a hotel pan of ravioli. I know how much I paid for that. They go through 6 of them or whatever. We can estimate how many is going to get going through, and then we can take that history and we can work it in to figure out how much we have to pay for it. Buffets are very, very tough. In buffets, people lose their shirts on buffets. I worked at a buffet that somebody thought it'd be a great idea to put sushi on the buffet. All right, it would have been great. All right, I think it was a $17 for the buffet or something like that. It might have been more than that, but it wasn't a whole lot. So I put out sushi. If everybody had 2-3 pieces of sushi plus the other stuff, it would have been fine. Some folks went there. They saw a full display, a huge display, like a sheet pan worth of sushi, and they take half of it. All right. We lost money on that deal. All right. So you got to be careful with that. All right. So I'm going to wrap this up. You can go over the rest of the slideshow and read the chapter very carefully. But that is pretty much all I have for this chapter. All right. We'll see you next week.